I left the radio on Friday looking at verse number 11. We have seen that Peter answers the question, where is the promise of his coming? By stating in verse number 9, the Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness. And then Peter promises the promise will be fulfilled. He establishes that. We saw the day of the Lord in verse number 10, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. And that is where we left the radio on last Friday, verses 10 and 11. Now remember, the promise was that the heavens would never be destroyed by water again, but the next time they'll be destroyed by fire. That is stated in verse number 10 and 11, where Peter draws a conclusion, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved. What manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? And I left the radio Friday pointing out that everything I have here is temporal, right down to the earth that you and I are walking around on. All of this is temporal. Now, I don't think that we ought to have an attitude, an uncaring attitude, or an attitude of belligerence toward what we have. Solomon says, a righteous man regardeth the life of his beast. How many times are we told in the Bible not to remove the ancient landmarks, to seek out the old paths wherein is the good way? If you adopt the attitude, well, it's all going to be burned up anyway, what's the use? Let's just live and eat, drink, and be merry, and consume and throw away. And I know a lot of people live that way. I mean, they spend every dime they take in on a Friday is gone by Monday morning. What a foolish, colossally foolish way to live. That is not a biblical way to live at all. I appreciate heirlooms, and I appreciate antiques. I appreciate things that have been left behind by my forebears. I appreciate the things that I have that belong to my grandfathers, both of my grandfathers, and I cherish the things that I have that I've carried with me through the course of my life. My wife and I are working on 38 years of marriage. We've celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary, and now we're working in 38 years of marriage, and just shortly my wife and I will have been married for 40 years, and I appreciate my wife as much today as I appreciated her on the day that she married me. You can tell much by a man, a woman, a society that have regard and respect for their forebears, for those that went before them, for the promises and the treasures that have been left behind to them by a bygone generation. I don't think that Peter is telling us that we ought to use up, burn up, consume, throw away, and have no regard. That would violate many other scriptures that I read in the Bible. I do think what Peter is trying to express is the fact that the only eternal thing I have is my soul. The only eternal thing you have, my friend, is your soul. And the only eternal thing I've ever put my hand on is God's Word. And the only eternal thing I am in possession of is my soul's salvation that I have in Jesus Christ. Now, when I understand that all these things shall be dissolved, and the only eternal thing I have is salvation in Jesus Christ, that puts everything in a brand new frame of reference. So now, Peter says, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, putting everything now in a new frame of reference, putting everything in a new frame of understanding. What manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? It is not the amount of money you and I can accumulate. It is not the amount of popularity or prestige or power that we can accumulate. but it is what have I done with Jesus Christ in the matter of the eternal destiny of my soul and the eternal destiny of your soul. I appreciate the automobile that I drive and the home that I live in, and I appreciate the clothes I wear. I was in a political senatorial delegation meeting several months ago now, and I was there talking to one of the senators, and in fact my senator in the State House, and he commented about the suit of clothes I was wearing. And Senator Allen, he's a colored man, and we were standing there enjoying one of those company, and he dresses nice, and I dress nice, and he complimented me on my suit. And I said, this suit I'm wearing is 22 years old. And he just couldn't believe it. He says, it looks like it's a year old. And I said, this suit is 22 years old. I've been wearing this suit 22 years, but I've tried to take good care of it, and I've enjoyed wearing it, and I appreciate the Lord letting me buy it, and I've worn it hundreds and hundreds of times, and I've been a lot of places in it, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm not taking that suit with me. And I'd like to take Carl Allen, Senator Carl Allen, to heaven with me. I'd like for him to be a born-again Christian, a saved man, and the only thing he's going to take with him is his soul. Seeing that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? It is not the fact that I know Senator Allen and he knows me on a first name basis, but it is how many people am I taking with me to heaven? The other day I was in a meeting, and the sheriff of Greenville County walked by, and he had a lapel pin that says the Greenville Sheriff's Office, Greenville County Sheriff's Office, and I said, I want one of those pins, Sheriff. And he said, Ben, take this one. And he reached up and took it out of the lapel of his coat and handed it to me, and I stuck it in the lapel of my coat and put the pin on the back of it. And I appreciate the sheriff doing that for me. Now, the sheriff is a born-again believer and teaches Sunday school at White Oak Baptist Church here in Greenville, and I appreciate that. Seeing that all these things shall be dissolved, now I appreciate knowing these men. I appreciate the preachers across the land that I know. I appreciate the pulpits across the land I have an opportunity to preach in. But not one of those pulpits that I've stood behind is going to heaven. Right now in the studio here at the Bright Spot Hour, the podium that I'm standing behind was my grandfather's podium. My grandfather stood behind this podium until he was to where he couldn't stand up, and then he got a stool and he sat on a stool behind this podium. And my grandfather has worn the stain off this podium, and I've had it now for 28 years. I've been standing behind this podium for more than 40 years. I've stood behind it while my grandfather was alive. The last 28 years since my grandfather's been gone, I've stood behind it exclusively, and I appreciate it, and I'll keep it till the day I die. But this podium's not going to heaven. But my soul is going to heaven. Praise God. And if you're saved, your soul is going to heaven. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? Now, Peter moves a step further. Here is what manner of person we ought to be in all holy conversation and godliness. Looking for, verse 12, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. Now, I love the earth that I live in. I love the society that I live in, and I want righteousness to prevail in the society here on earth, and I'm grieved at my soul like you are at the ungodliness and the unrighteousness that I observe in society, and the unrighteousness that you observe in society. Those things are a grief to you and to me. And we need to be the best witness we possibly can. We need to do all we can to evangelize the lost and to try to bring lost men and women to Christ. But Peter says the holy conversation and godliness that we should have should prompt us to look beyond this current life and to look beyond this current vale of tears that we live in and to look forward to the coming of the day of God. Now here I find the last days. I find that in verse 3. I find the day of the Lord in verse 10. And now I find the day of God in verse number 12. The last days of the time of the tribulation period. The day of the Lord is the hour of the revelation when Christ returns in the second advent. And the day of God is what the theologians call eternity future. The eternity that lies out before us. In this day of God, Peter states that we look for new heavens and a new earth. Now that's exactly what I read in Revelation 21 and verse number 1. John the Beloved said, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride, the New Jerusalem, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. That is now the day of God. The tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and shall be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. The last enemy, according to the Revelation, the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. And it is here that I read this in Revelation 21:4, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. Neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Now that's exactly what Peter has said. The former things are passed away. 2 Peter 3:11, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? These things shall be dissolved. The former things are passed away. Now, what we have here is going to be superseded, far and away, superseded by better things and new things and glorious things, so identified as the former things shall pass away. And he sat upon the throne and said, he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. And he said unto me, It is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of water of life freely. He that overcometh shall inherit all things. That sounds like Revelation 2 and 3 and the 7 churches. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. How wonderful and marvelous this is. Now, my friend, allow your life to be altered and changed for the better as a result of understanding that all these things shall be dissolved.
Correspondence may be sent to the Bright Spot Hour, Post Office Box 4, Greenville, South Carolina 296